Callum Robinson was in the press conference yesterday, and it was, I think, fairly obvious that he hadn't been vaccinated from the way the conversation went last time round when he was unavailable for part of the first part of the last international window. When you think that he probably would have got into the team, would have started, considering he was a striker in form. Here's what he had to say about vaccinations in the press conference yesterday. Have a look. There's no audio on that though, so
say everyone should be vaccinated, or you shouldn't get vaccinated. I think it's your personal choice. If you want to be vaccinated, then go do it. But if you don't want to, it is what it is. It's everyone's choice. I can't tell people to get it, and I can't tell people not to.
Dave, what's your personal choice, Connor? Have you decided to get vaccinated?
I haven't been vaccinated yet, no. So that's my choice at this moment in time.
So people might think that's unusual given your own personal health experiences.
Yeah, of course. As I said, it's obviously annoying that I've caught it twice, but I haven't been vaccinated. Further down the line, I could change my mind and want to do it, but at this moment in time, I haven't been vaccinated. No.
Gavin, do you mind if I ask you why you didn't do that?
I just haven't done it. I think, as I said to man here, it's your personal choice, and my choice at this moment in time. I haven't been vaccinated. I know, as you said, there's managers and people that will want you to do it, which is right in their way of what they think. But everyone has their choice and what they want to do. I wouldn't force it on people to do it or not. It's your choice. It's your body, and where you live.
Fair enough. Do you think you lost caps because of it? Could you well have avoided it the second time?
Well, the first ones, I'm not sure if I could have even had the vaccination last year. Yeah, so obviously I missed the two. I think I played one. I played the Serbia away. Slovakia away, sorry, and then there was close contact, and then I actually caught it against just before the England friendly, and I missed 3 games. But I've obviously definitely lost caps through the corona because of the coronavirus, which is it's obviously so annoying. That virus can take away caps from you, but
if the second time you got vaccinated, there's a huge percentage of chance of you not getting it the second time. Do you realise, like, the most recent time?
What, on the other month?
Yeah, if you were vaccinated, you would have played for Ireland.
Yeah, I know. But that, as I said, that was my choice. I haven't been vaccinated, and that's where I'm at the moment. As I said, if things might change, where I think, yeah, I want to get vaccinated, I'm going to do it. But at this moment in time, I haven't made that decision. At the moment, I'm not. No.
So that's the press conference yesterday. Nathan, good morning to you. How are you? I guess it's frustrating for Stephen Kenny that this is still an issue when, as Callum Robinson points out, it did cost him the opportunity to play for his country.
Well, Callum Robinson said it's annoying that he missed that second run of fixtures because of picking up COVID for a second time. It's not annoying. There's a certain inevitability about it if you're refusing to get the vaccine, and it may not be the last time that he ends up missing Republic of Ireland internationals. And we should think back to this time a year ago. A lot has gone wrong for Stephen Kenny since he got the Republic of Ireland job, but COVID for the first 3-4 months denied him the opportunity to get any momentum. Think back even to the minutes before the game over in Slovakia, and Adam Ida and Aaron Connolly being ruled out of the match, and then they end up in a situation where there's 14 players from an original squad at one stage missing because of COVID-related issues. So for those of us who have been vaccinated and everyone around them has been vaccinated, I think it's very hard to understand the reasoning behind this. But we just have to look at the statistics where they still reckon under 50% of Premier League footballers aren't vaccinated.
Yeah.
And is that because they've weighed up the possible effects of testing positive for COVID against the possible effects of getting a vaccine?
Well,
are they like
if they have
anti-vaxxers and in their own little bubble where they don't see anything else? They're only talking to the same people of similar mindset. They don't see anything on social media that doesn't feed into their personal way of life, and they don't see it the way we see it, as straightforward a decision as it was for most people.
It has to be the second of those two options, doesn't it? Because you've got some clubs in the Premier League who are operating at sub 30% vaccination rate, And then you've got Jurgen Klopp coming out the other day to say that Liverpool are at 99% vaccination rate. So this is not an all footballers situation, or because they are professional athletes they are making this decision. This is a culture thing, right?
Well, it's hard to know, right? Is it that certain dressing rooms have loudmouths?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, like and that actually they're a fairly easily led group one way or another. So Man United, the back page of the London Times this morning, are among the Premier League clubs still trying to persuade a number of their teams. They're not believed to be the outliers. There's two outliers who have 20% of their squads, but Manchester United are kind of around the 50% apparently. That's one of the figures that's suggested there. So look, I don't know, the bit where it's like my body, my choice, you know, I see the stealing of the language that they're doing there. I see I see where that comes from. But in this instance, that's not actually a reason. So he was asked why, and it was like, well, I just haven't. I just haven't. Like, I haven't because I got information from this source and this source and this source, and I'm concerned about this, and this. And if that conversation happened, and in fairness, maybe a press conference is not the most natural place to do that and to have that kind of back and forth, but at least then you'd know what you're dealing with. At the moment, it's just like, well, it's my choice. I get to decide on this thing. It's like, okay, well, all the people who decided not to get their kids vaccinated against measles, and now measles is making a comeback. Like, vaccination really only works if there's a collective decision made that we're going to go this direction because it's for our collective benefit. And the other thing is that, like, there have been cases of fairly severe injury or illness that athletes have been more prone to than the general population. Myocarditis is one of those conditions that is being linked with athletes who go back after having had COVID. Something to do with the quality of oxygen getting to the air of high performance athletes, and there are a few cases of it, but there are a few cases of it in the US in particular. Like, it would be good to know what information the people who are making these decisions are getting, so that you can at least have a conversation about it.
I think you're right. I think there are loudmouths in a dressing room who probably are straight out and are reading online and reading what the anti-vaxxers are saying and spreading it and putting doubt into the mind of other players, and then they end up in that same little bubble, and they're reading that. And we know the way that social media works, that once you start reading it, you're probably not going to see anything else. But you would have hoped that they would respect and listen to the team doctors at club level enough, who have to be encouraging them to get this. But it's clearly not getting through. And from what I understand, Callum Robinson isn't the only member of the Republic of Ireland squad who's tested positive for COVID. Like, there are quite a few players in this squad. I think Stephen Kenny said he thinks it's single figures who haven't been vaccinated. It's that lack of respect, it feels, for the other people that you're around, that you've made the decision. Like, it does reduce transmissibility if you are vaccinated. Like, there are lots of people around every club squad, every international squad, who I'm sure in ways are immunocompromised, who I'm sure in ways are in the age group where it's far more dangerous to them than it is to young, fit and healthy footballers. And just think about that for a minute. Just pause, think about it and go, actually, I'll just get this for the betterment of everybody around me. I will take whatever risk is in my head, whatever tiny risk it is. But when you have players who've tested positive twice, and what Callum Robinson was saying second time was sick from this.
He had chest issues.
That even still after that, he didn't think, I wouldn't like to get this again. You're fighting a bit of a losing battle with some of these players. And I don't know what Stephen Kenny can do.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, because he said that he thinks it's too radical to not pick players who haven't been vaccinated. And, like, in a way, if we were England or Brazil or Italy and we had millions and millions of players and there was a cohort who were unvaccinated and they were deciding that actually they were putting themselves ahead of their team, then you wouldn't pick them. But in this instance, we don't have the strength and depth to go, I'm making this decision, I'm taking this stand. Or do we? Is that actually what we should do? I mean, when the asterisk beside Stephen Kenny is and his record is like, oh, well, actually, he went through the COVID era and he couldn't pick some of his players because they weren't vaccinated. And it's like, next manager comes in. Do you know, like, what do you do living in the real world?
I don't think it's a fair comparison either, because England are selecting players who haven't been vaccinated for COVID. Brazil are selecting players. In fact, we're probably going to find out a little bit more over the next few weeks because of the red list countries in the UK and players who may have to isolate if they're not double vaccinated as to who has and hasn't been. So if we look at the Premier League and it's 50%, you'd have to assume the England squad is more or less 50% as well. And Gareth Southgate is picking all those players. So I don't think it comes down to, well, can we risk leaving out Callum Robinson because he's not vaccinated? I think he's just looking at it purely from what Stephen Kenny sees as an ethical point of view. Can I force players to do anything? And clearly feels he can't. I wonder, legally, can he force players to have a vaccine to be in a Republic of Ireland squad? But the way around this is probably what is going to happen is that life will become so difficult for those players who aren't vaccinated. We saw with the under-21 squad that Jim Crawford's basically had to name a couple of squads because of red list, and telling the young players, if you're not vaccinated, there's a very good chance you're not going to be able to play for Ireland in a lot of these fixtures because you won't be allowed travel. So maybe that is the way around this, is that there will be restrictions on travel for players who haven't been double vaccinated, and that will rule out a lot of players. But will that change their point of view? It doesn't sound like it.
Probably not. Like, I wonder if the real difference is actually just going to come at club level, because these are the people who employ these players, and it might get to a stage where those players suddenly aren't earning their full wages as a result of not being fully vaccinated, as we're starting to see in the United States at the moment, and that potentially is the next step in this. I think for Stephen Kenny, I think that he would take a stand that a lot of other managers aren't taking, that pretty much every other manager isn't taking at the moment, to leave out a player who hasn't been fully vaccinated. Given his competitive record so far, that is a bridge too far for Stephen Kenny. And can we accept that sort of that slight hypocrisy where, of course, Stephen Kenny is pro-vaccine and wants all his players to be vaccinated while still playing someone like Callum Robinson? I think we can. I think we can get over that. And I think we're in this very complicated situation now where maybe over these next couple of weeks and months it becomes a more defined thing, where that 30% gets much higher in the Premier League, and all of a sudden it is the vast minority of players who aren't vaccinated, and then you can start having conversations about not being paid for not appearing because you're going to start missing games or whatever. So I think that conversation might come down the line, but maybe that's an optimistic view.
What's happening in the NBA?
Well, in the NBA right now, there's two different conversations. The first one is the lack of speaking out about the vaccines. There's a huge slice of disappointment with LeBron James for not speaking out on this and saying that he's essentially peddling the line. It's your body, you can do whatever you want with it, despite the fact that obviously he spoke out quite a bit last year when there were social justice issues. Of course, a very different scenario, but there is a big difference this year compared to last year when it was a political conversation. What you have is Kyrie Irving, who cannot train in New York at the moment, cannot play in New York at the moment, will miss stretches of home games because he's not fully vaccinated. The law in the city right now means that you cannot play there in an indoor setting if you're not jabbed at least once, and he has been hesitant to get his vaccine. So one of their highest paid players will not be able to play as a result of his vaccine status. Steve Nash, their head coach with the Brooklyn Nets, has said that we're not thinking of moving our games or our practices outside of Brooklyn just yet, which is just a bizarre conversation to be having at this point. You've got someone like Andrew Wiggins, who we mentioned on the show earlier on as well, who was earlier on in the week, I should say, who was one of the bigger voices of not getting the vaccine. He says he's been forced to get the vaccine. Steve Kerr came out over the weekend and said he's got his jab. Andrew Wiggins has come out and said, I was forced to get it, and I hope I don't have any health issues in 10, 12 years' time. So there is still that view out there, and however, despite that, there are players who are kind of succumbing to maybe a bit of pressure that they're feeling and getting the vaccine. So that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, does the UK and Ireland follow suit over the next couple of months? Now, the NBA is at a 95% vaccination rate, so it is the 5% that are grabbing the headlines, whereas in the Premier League, what is it, well over 50%? It's a completely different scenario at this point.
Yeah. I mean, obviously something has seeped into the culture where these conversations are happening, and they are, maybe Facebook going down for 24 hours was the window for everybody to get in and go, hey, by the way, did you know the vaccine's actually good for you? You'll be grand. Who knows? Maybe footballers aren't using it. Is there anti-vaxxers on TikTok?
I think there's everything on TikTok. Like the thing with this story as well is that, maybe Callum Robinson deserves a little bit of credit for actually being honest about it, but I do think
I'd give him much more credit if he said, these were the sources, this is what I'm worried about, these are my concerns, as opposed to my body, my choice. because that's just like it ain't none of your business. And fair enough, but like if you don't get picked or if you miss games, then you're not as good a teammate as you could be, and you put yourself in this scenario because there are special rules for those who are vaccinated in terms of being a close contact, and you know, if you're a close contact and you test negative but you've been double jabbed, away you go. Life is normal, but not if you haven't been. Like,
and I think
I don't want to read too much into his tone. It didn't sound as though he felt as if this was a massive deal that he hadn't been vaccinated. Didn't seem to be making that connection between the fact he had tested positive a second time and not had the vaccine. But I think a huge part is footballers and that bubble and not a full understanding of what's happening, even going all the way back to a year ago. And I know Stephen Kenny didn't want to criticise, but the two players who moved seats on the plane on the way to Slovakia, even that sort of relaxed attitude of, we're in this bubble, we're meant to be separate from everyone else, but does it really matter that much? Yes, it does. Every little thing matters that much. So I don't think we should have any great sympathy for any of these players and any of the hassles that they're going to have over the coming weeks and months, whether it's missing games, whether it's issues with their clubs. Like, this is a decision that they have made on their side, and they're going to have to deal with the consequences.
And that point that you made earlier on, Nathan, as well, I think it's that quote, the sort of, it's so annoying that a virus can take away caps from you, is the thing that people will take away from that and lose sympathy for him immediately. It's almost reminiscent of that Eric Andre sketch where he turns around and shoots Hannibal Buress and is like, who shot Hannibal? It's like, who's to blame for this? And it's like, your decision to not get vaccinated is probably why there have been caps taken away from you. It is something... That quote for me is the thing that will lose sympathy with a lot of people when they look at the Callum Robinson quote. And as you say, Nathan, the tone of the piece plays into that completely.
Eric Andre Hannibal Buress.
Yeah, is this the anti-travelling Wilburys? It's the reverse travelling Wilburys.
You know, it's
anybody over the age of 34 is like, what?
It's a well used meme on the internet in our brave new world of meme use. You know, he turns around and shoots the guy and is like, who shot Hannibal? There is this sort of confusion within Callum Robinson's tone about it's so unfair and it's a bit unfortunate that somebody can take away caps from you because of a virus. And it's like, there is one solution to that. There is one very obvious solution to that unfortunate or that annoyance. I'm
Googling the meme now. Oh, okay. Okay, I get it. Right.
Great content.
Quality.